This is Magic, welcoming y'all to the More Than Music podcast hosted by Soulseed. Today's episode will be hosted by Sky and myself, and we will be introducing our good friends Dubbest, an awesome reggae band who now reside in San Diego, who came from the East Coast. Stay tuned to hear their story of their musical journey and inspirations and some fun road stories that we share. And I think it'll be an awesome episode for you all to enjoy. So thank you for joining the More Than Music podcast today.
Welcome to the More Than Music podcast, hosted by us, Soulseed. We'll be sharing tour stories, lyric breakdowns, and insights into our approach to music, the art, as well as the business. We'll also be interviewing some of the friends and family we've made throughout the years in the spirit of sharing their many marvelous trials and triumphs. So get comfortable and join us as we explore More Than Music.
What up, Steedstronauts fam? Thank you all so much for joining us here, the More Than Music podcast. Today we have Magic and Sky hosting this episode, and we are bringing in the most incredible band, one of our best friends. These guys are the real deal. This is Dubbest coming out of San Diego. We are joined with Ryan, Corey, Andrew, and Kyle. How are you guys doing?
Hey, fantastic. Miss everybody over there. Miss you guys.
Miss y'all, man. Yeah, no, seriously stoked to be able to hit the road again and join each other in person. Thank you for joining us today. Stoked for everybody to get introduced to you, get to introduce to your music. What started you guys out? Were you all friends first, or did you meet like through friends, music? How did that start?
Once we were quite young, well, some of them.
Yeah, I mean, me and Ryan played together since like 5th grade. But we didn't go to the same school as these guys, so we didn't meet Andrew until like 7th grade.
Yeah.
And he was kind of like our rival, even though we were friends.
Music rivals.
He was in a band and we were in a band, so we were kind of rivals. And then we met Kyle when he was a freshman and we were sophomores in high school.
It was like 06.
Yeah. 2006.
Nice.
You guys, their bands would always be suffering like the drummer problem, but like luckily we had a drummer, so we kind of had that edge. But like we weren't doing anything. We were just like coming from 82.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So really, there was no need to like not get along. So
then Andrew spitefully played drums for us eventually, and
This was before I even knew these guys.
yeah, I mean that lightly. Like we definitely were friends, but we didn't want to admit it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Spite drums.
yeah.
Nice, man. So yeah, dude, so school, that's always cool. Like just meeting homies. That's actually like the first band I played in, even before meeting Mikey. It was like just, they're like, oh, you play this, you play that. Like, all right, well, let's jam sometime. And then you just become best buds. And
same. My first group was also just a group of high school buddies, and I was less a performer at the beginning. We had access to a studio. I grew up in the Bay Area outside of San Francisco in California, and we had access to a studio through a friend. And he was kind of part of the old school hippie scene outside of San Francisco, the Merry Pranksters and the old Dead scene and whatnot. And he used to put out some like 70s and 80s jam bands and stuff in the studio, and he basically let us jam for free. And we just, loaded them up with the goods, and he let us in the door. And as high school kids with nowhere else to go, we basically lived in that studio junior, senior year when I wasn't playing ball. And I started running sound, actually. I began my music career as a sound engineer, and I used that very loosely, but he did teach me how to do it. And I at least knew how to plug everything in and turn everything on, which is pretty cool. So that's awesome. And Kyle, you mentioned that was 2006, 2009. Is that about when everything kind of clicked? Is that about where we're at?
I was a freshman in high school in 06, and I met them through a kid that I grew up with that played drums in one of their they had Law 1, and then Corey and Ryan had Firing Squad. So I joined Firing Squad as the drummer. We played punk and like grunge and like Sublime covers.
Dipped into reggae a little bit.
Yeah, Bad Brains, and then we started getting really into reggae.
And then at one point there were like 5 different bands between this group of people, and like trying to schedule a band practice became really impossible. Like we would fight over like who was gonna get to practice, and there was
we'd fight over Corey because he was in both bands.
Yeah, was, and then it was just complicated as hell.
I was being very slutty musically.
You're in high demand. That's quite the honor. Yeah, that's interesting. And just to be clear here to our listeners, So we're talking to you in San Diego currently. You're based out of San Diego now, but this is actually on the East Coast, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Bridgewater, Massachusetts. That's where we all grew up.
South of Boston.
It's like 20 minutes south of Boston in the suburbs. South Shore.
Yep, South Shore.
South Shore is what they call it.
It's like a college town, but it's pretty big town. It was amazing pizza. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say about it. But
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Good pizza.
Haunted.
That's all you need. Yeah,
Oh, it's
roads,
haunted.
good roads to
Kinda.
skate. Good roads to skateboard.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Nice,
God, yeah.
nice woods. We
Yeah,
hung out in
yeah.
the woods a lot.
Oh yeah.
we
was a
had,
lot
had
of
to
fun.
go to the woods to smoke weed when we were.
Sounds like Soul Seed's upbringing. Growing up here in the in the Pacific Northwest, there's a lot of trails, some beach work, very little bigger city vibe. So I appreciate that. So you guys are in Massachusetts, growing up, playing in high school, getting together. You're in two bands. How did the two bands eventually merge into what you have now?
I think
How did that happen?
well, when we named the band, one of the bands Dubbest, I feel like everyone was like jealous of that name, first of all. All the bands had like bad names, you know what I mean? It was like, not bad names, but they're like punk names. And we were trying to do like kind of like a different thing. We were just focused on like
Commit to reggae.
commit
music.
to
It
roots.
was kind of like a
roots reggae.
side project for like.
Yeah, it started as a side
Second.
project.
Yeah.
I was actually the original drummer of that, and then it just got all shifted around. So basically, like that became the most exciting thing in the group, you know, and we kind of like turned it into one band. And you know, there was like basically people that weren't like always, you know, at like just it kind of just boiled down to a smaller group. at that
Yeah,
point.
the lazy musicians in our group got weeded out,
Yeah,
basically.
I didn't want to
And like
say it, but
everyone that was ready to commit, like all joined the best, basically.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so outside of kind of revolving bass position, which we'll get to a little bit later on, you guys are the core four, and you have been the original four otherwise since the beginning. 12 years ago now?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
2009. Yeah.
And one more question, I'll let Magic jump in here. So now what Magic and I know, and what Soul Seed knows with playing with you guys, Ryan's keys and vocals, Kyle's drums. You guys, you kind of switch off on bass and guitar, or Corey, are you strictly guitar? Andrew's guitar and bass now, but now I'm hearing that basically all of you play drums at one point. Which just quickly fill us in really quick. Like, are all of you multi-instrumentalists? How did you fall into the positions you're currently at with Dubbest? Because again, what Magic and I know you as isn't what we're hearing right now, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, me and Andrew played guitar the whole time in Dubbest. We both played guitar. We'd switch off between lead and rhythm.
Yeah, and we started playing those instruments as kids. Like that was our
Yeah.
first instrument. So like I always like had the love for it, and like, you know what I mean? But growing up and all being in bands together, and like that downtime when someone else sits on the drum kit, someone else gets on the
Yeah.
bass, like that was a big part of it. And that like came out to a lot of learning, because we're all very it's a lot of like what we hear, you know, we use our ear for like everything. So
I think we're also all like kind of like we do what needs to be done. Like we're all the kind of people that we fill whatever void needs to be filled. Like I think I didn't want to start singing. I think when Corey and I were like little kids playing music, it was like someone's gonna sing. We can't just play like Nirvana covers with no vocals. Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So it was kind of like, all right, well I guess I'll sing some and you'll sing some. And it was like and then it turned into like, wow, it became really fun. You know what I mean? It developed into something. But we've all always been able to kind of like fill whatever void, like Andrew's playing bass.
Yeah.
You know, it just whatever becomes available or whatever needs to happen. You know, we're all pretty flexible.
I
So.
played keyboards on one of our albums, Avoid the Fear. It's basically
Yeah.
Ryan was at college and you were playing melodica at the time,
Yeah,
but didn't have a keyboard. And I like bought a Fender Rhodes. So I just used that. And like, I wasn't good. Like I hadn't played in years, but I knew enough to play like rhythm for reggae, you know, on a
Yeah.
keyboard.
I think you had a keyboard on stage sometimes.
Yeah, there was a handful of shows where I had a keyboard.
Wasn't it my like Casio?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like
It
a
was
young,
not-
you know, like a.
Yeah. I never brought the
$50.
Rhodes anywhere.
we used to
Yeah.
do some pretty weird jams and stuff. You know, it was
Yeah, we played a lot of weird shows where a member of Dubbest couldn't make it. and we wanted to take the gig anyway, and we ended up like playing weird music. It was like 3 like trio shows and
2
stuff
out
like
of
that.
5.
Yeah.
That's interesting. We've had to pull some things too, and usually our only when we do that, our situation is basically like we're already on the road. We pick up, you guys know how it is. You're on the road, you have an off day, you pick up something from a local or whatever, and you play it. But we've played a number of shows with somebody missing due to illness. We've had, we've been touring 10 years, things happen on the road, and we'll have somebody swap out. But it's interesting, like all of us like to play multiple instruments, but we're pretty set in our positions as far as what we play. So that's really awesome. And, Fortunate Youth is, I think one of the prominent bands that has made playing different instruments during the same show, part of their show. I mean, it's incredible watching them play, and literally all the guys are just cycling through each instrument essentially throughout the show. And it's really fun to watch on stage. So that's awesome. You guys are able to do that.
Fish did that actually back in the day. They had a rotation jam, and like they would all rotate instruments every like couple minutes. It was pretty.
Nice.
I love that.
Well, yeah, I mean, what Slightly Stoopid? They'll like throw each other the bass, like just catch it, switch it, mid song. Dude, so go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying they're very quick with it. They're used to it.
Yeah. That's awesome, Ryan. I actually find that really interesting that you didn't want to sing initially, especially like as
It was more just like, we realized someone had to do it. It wasn't necessarily what I got into it for, but it was like someone was going to have to sing if we're going to cover all these songs that we want to play.
Well, I'll just jump in and say, I know that you have the 3 and potentially 4-part harmonies going on awesome, which makes your roots sound so fucking crispy and delicious. But Ryan, I have to say, man, your voice is butter, dude. And I don't know if you guys all have classic school training. I know the School of Berkeley is out there in the Boston area. I don't know if you guys have any affiliation with that at all, but your voice, man, is just one of my favorites across the board. And the harmonies that the rest of you put behind it, it just sounds so smooth. And when you play a roots style, like Soul Seed has 5 vocalists, all of us do something, but like Magic and I are predominantly rapping, and then we do a little bit of like harmonizing. Mikey does both. Benny's primarily singing, and Kenny kind of has a couple of songs, so it's a much different situation. But the way you guys have orchestrated the vocal side of your music, knowing now that it wasn't necessarily the plan going in when you all started, is frankly incredible, man. Seriously. That's really, really awesome. And I just love the sound in general, but Ryan, your voice is delicious.
Thank you. Well, these guys also started singing kind of in the same way, where it was like, we loved the harmony groups. Like we really love like the Itals and the Gladiators and all those like harmony groups and all those, like that sound is really something we're into. So we wanted to do that, and it just became like someone, there has to be 3 or 4 people singing to make that happen. So it became a necessity, and it's also just super fun. The more that one person can do on the stage, the more excited, more deep the music, like the more sound there's going to be, and it just adds layers. Might as well sing. Kyle was singing at first too. It's probably a lot to do, singing and playing drums all the time.
Yeah. Magic knows.
double duty.
Yeah, it's intense shit stuff. Props.
Thank you, bros. Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's awesome. Like, I think it's really cool that you guys have more of an old reggae style, like more of that Motown reggae style, where it is like harmonies and like some of your flat picking, some of those like trills that you boys do on the guitars are just like so clean, super well polished. And it really makes it unique in today's reggae. I feel like there's so much like rock reggae and hip hop reggae, and you guys bring this really rootsy, awesome, like pretty sound, like lovers rock kind of style. And I've heard people say that like Ryan, your voice is like the reggae that people miss, it's like bringing back that kind of Motown reggae. So I'm hyped on you guys and on your sound. I hope people leave this podcast and look you up on Spotify or iTunes and download your stuff immediately. So what brought you guys from the East Coast to the West Coast? I mean, obviously I could kind of guess, but I'm really curious to hear what you guys went through, because that's a huge move, and to do it for the music is super inspiring.
Something we had talked about for a while. You know, we were basically like, we toured the Northeast a lot, and once we started touring kind of like the whole East Coast, and then eventually we moved our way out west, and we eventually toured California, and we just loved it. And like, it's something we talked about moving for a while, and like, I don't know what made us pick San Diego specifically.
It always seemed like the dream, basically.
Yeah.
I had never even been to California, and I wanted to live there, like ever since being a kid, basically. You know?
I kind of did too. Like I had family in the Bay Area, and I went out there a couple of times when I was little, and you know, Northern California is a whole different thing too, but you know, the whole state is amazing. But I always kind of wanted to live on the West Coast too.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, with that sunny, I mean, being a reggae band, I'm sure it's different everywhere you go, but yeah, like San Diego, California, like that is kind of the dream. There's so much music that you hear that has come out of that area that then you're just like, oh, like, well, let's go there. That's the next best option.
Have to be near the ocean too. But
yeah, and it was like we definitely thought Southern California because of the reggae scene, but also like LA is awesome to have access to. It is cool, but we didn't want to necessarily live in LA.
Yeah.
So it's like to be a few hours from LA is awesome, and not be like driving through it all the time when you don't have to. And Southern California just has that, you know, reggae is like the focus here. You hear it like out of every car, in every like restaurant, like it's the genre of the area. Like the same way that if you go to like, you know, Austin, Texas, you're probably going to hear more like country rock and stuff. Like just, it's, you know, it's the standard here.
We kind of realized there was more opportunity for us here than where we were from. And, you know, we love where we're from and everything, but you know, it was really hard to book a show in like New York City, even like we've never even technically played in New York City, but
even Boston, like the city, it was tough to like book shows and like play really good shows in those cities.
And sustaining a crowd, because it's such a college-based area, so it's like a tide of people that's always changing. So it's like,
and then the winter
later,
makes the city so hard to navigate, especially in park and all that stuff. And whenever, like, if you have a show, and you guys probably know this too, but if you have a show and it snows, it's gonna definitely like cut out the audience a little bit. Like people just don't want to leave the house as much when it's snowing. We were just like.
Absolutely. And that's one thing, you don't have to worry about in San Diego is the weather, which is nice. And, you know, growing up in the Bay Area, even growing up in California, San Diego was the place to go. And for me, it was actually going to college down to San Diego or coming up here to Eugene. And I ended up in Eugene and going to U of O, and the rest is history. But San Diego has drawn a lot of transplants. You know, a good friend of ours, I'm repping them, big up Synergy. But, you know, Synergy grew up with us, started in Arizona, but then they grew up with us in Southern Oregon, and then transferred, you know, back down to San Diego eventually as well. And there's many other bands, obviously, over the years who have done that as well. So the sound, obviously pre-pandemic, we don't know what's going to happen after we get out of this, but the venues and the scene and the culture down there in general, and the history, of course, of Sublime and Slightly Stupid and these groups who have kind of transcended there. But it's been a great scene. And that's awesome that you guys made the move. Soulseed has had a couple loose conversations over the years because we have had our backs against the wall and we're very aware of it. But we love where we are and our families are here, and it's kind of hard to uproot, especially at this point. But we've known that our backs are against the wall growing up in the Pacific Northwest. And if we were in Portland or Seattle, it might be a little bit different. But little Eugene, you know, it's hard. And it wasn't until we really got some like regional and national exposure were we able to draw bigger bands passing through, and we could actually bring them to Eugene to play with us. And we could host them here with 300, 400, 500 people. It was very hard to do. So I applaud you guys for making the move, because we've talked about it a lot and there was always some reason not to. So well done.
I think also you realize when you tour a lot though that like it kind of doesn't matter where you live if you're on the road enough. You know what I mean? Like you guys are close to a lot of great cities up there, like where you're at. So you can do like 3-hour radius from there, do a bunch of shit. But also, when you're on the road, it's like you're gonna hit everywhere eventually anyway. So it's what I mean.
Yep.
You guys are in an awesome. So
it's cool what you guys have done with like. We love like coming up there and just seeing like this like giant family and like scene that you guys have created up there it's really awesome. It's like something we were never able to do in our area. I mean, we had some great shows in our like hometown area, but just you guys have like a whole like I'm sure everyone in Eugene knows who Soul Seed is.
Exactly, yeah.
And like surrounding areas,
Well, and we're hyped to have been able to like bring you guys in, and then like we need you guys in Oregon more. It's nice now that you guys are so close, and we've been listening to your music for a long time. So it's like to finally link and then just become on the homie level. It's awesome to bring you into the family, because that is sort of our mentality. Is it's not fans, it's not our crowd. It is like a big gathering of the fam. You get everybody together, and whether you know them or you're meeting them. Or you don't know them at all. It's just like everybody's included as long as everybody feels safe. There's a space for everybody. And I love how music can become more than just the show and the party. And like we can really create a positive community. And I love just like having you guys be a part of it and having you a little closer to us.
Hospitable bands I've ever met in my entire life. You guys always treat us like, I don't know. You treat us so good when we're on the road up there. So thank you guys.
Well, we appreciate that. And we do take a lot of pride in doing it, hosting bands locally when we can at our houses, or, at least feeding people or, doing whatever we can do. But the reality is, man, and you guys know this as well, as well as we do. It's just the reciprocation of what people have honored us with over the years, and we know that if we were in San Diego or back east or whatever, you guys would put out phone calls to us and you'd have somewhere for us to stay. And we don't have those connections back east, especially as strong as you guys do, clearly. So, that is what is so beautiful about the music scene and groups at our level that are doing it for each other. But specifically the reggae scene, and just so many family bands and homies. And when we play together, we have a lot of collaborations and we know each other's songs and we're singing each other's music. And, we know when the drops happen and it's just, you get looks on stage and off stage, like, oh, that was dirty, like you feel it. And that's a really special energy that you just don't get from the common fan necessarily, because they don't live the musician life. And it's just an extra frosting on the cake when we're able to play with groups that we know deeply, like you guys. So it's really an honor, and the least we can do is put you up and get you some dinner. And shouts out to our ladies too, because all of them are super duper supportive of us hosting strangers in our houses. So big up to the ladies, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys have made some great food for us, like over the years.
Oh yeah.
Hey man, it's all this guy. Magic Mike is the real deal. The original Magic Mike started as a chef, believe it or not, before dancing. This man is legit. Look, we call it parking lot pasta when we're on the road, because that's just road life. But this guy makes some gourmet whatever we're eating that night. So Magic Mike is the real deal.
I believe it.
I was going to say, it's kind of like one of my jobs in the band, like a duty of mine to make sure that like, it's even funny now, I do it even beyond Oregon, where like, if I know an area or somebody needs something, or like I try to make sure everybody has what they need and everybody's comfortable. Everybody's like taken care of. It's like Mama Magic definitely gets thrown around sometimes in the bus, because it's like, I'm just trying to make sure that everybody's comfortable, taken care of, having a good time, well fed. And then let's just like make some awesome times and memories. And
yeah, that's awesome.
That's amazing.
Thank you guys, man. It's a bummer. Sometimes when we talk, it cuts out your mic. So there's definitely been a couple times where I want to like create good space to hear all you guys talk, because I definitely want, this is about you guys. I'm stoked to have you join us and hear your story.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks for giving us that opportunity for sure.
Yeah, man. Cool.
So I was super curious, kind of like is there a reggae scene in Boston?
Some of our favorite,
sure.
Bands, growing up are from that area. Like the Northeast definitely gave birth to some of our favorite bands. Giant Panda, 10th Contraplant, John Brown's Body. Like they're all based in that corner of the country. So like, we, as far as a scene with like, a great like constant audience and places to play and all that, it's different. But with bands, I think the stylistically, it's some of our favorite music.
There's great musicians there, for sure. Just like Boston,
yeah,
and like kind of the New York, upstate area, Western Mass, all of New England. There just seems to be a lot of great musicians and tons of competition and inspiration. And
yeah, I would say it's a different vibe scene wise. Like it's just a whole other, like one thing that's cool about the West Coast and especially like Southern California is it's very like community based, everyone kind of knows each other. And I feel like Boston tends to be a little more competitive. I don't know if it's the school thing or what it is, but it just sort of feels a little more like, fighting for, I don't know, everyone's kind of fighting for a spot and all that. It's a little bit different, but not, for the most part, we've had good experiences, but we also felt like where we grew up, like we were like, if we don't, go to the next level, we are going to be stuck in this loop sort of, and we wanted to like take it to the next level. And then when we go back to the East Coast at home, it's like that much bigger, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we kind of proved it that we did what we wanted to do,
reestablishing home base.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, hell yeah, that's the hero's journey right there. You guys are like making a story, man. I love it.
Yeah, we really like committed. I mean, like people say it all the time, like, oh, I wish we did this, I wish like our band moved and stuff. But like we literally just all packed our cars, didn't have jobs or a place to live. And we all like, within the same week, we all made the drive to California. And we got an Airbnb, a 1-bedroom Airbnb
Yes.
for like 3 weeks. And we all, 5 of us, 'cause our bass player Sean was with us too. So 5 of us lived there for 3 weeks, just like looking for jobs and an apartment. And
Yeah, it was like an
that.
orphanage. There was like a room with like a bunch of beds in a row, like it was literally like that. It was hilarious.
It was like the Nash's basement, but like compact.
Yeah.
Shouts out to the Nash.
So we were just like, oh my God, they have dispensaries. This is crazy.
Yeah, it was my
Went to the dispensary every day to buy like $10 worth of something else.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And good news, good thing you guys are used to living in a van, living in a bus on the road, because living in a 1-bedroom cottage, it would be weird for most folks, but I'm sure you guys are just rolling with the punches. I mean, it's no different, right?
It was only like
we spent a month there, and then we found a house where like the property management was like cool enough to like.
They weren't even that cool because nobody had credit or anything. So we literally offered them like 5 months up front for like a house rental, and they took it basically. So we all pitched in like a month rent.
Wow.
We gave them like 10 G's up front to like because nobody had jobs or credit.
Yeah, because we basically all saved all our money. We were like, we're gonna move to California like in a year or whatever, and we all just worked our asses off, saved our money, and like just went for it. And basically, we're like, that's the only way we're gonna get an apartment is like bribery, basically. Like here's a bunch of fucking months of rent. So we basically
looked at tons of places.
Yeah,
they were all like, oh well, you don't have jobs, and like we're like, not yet.
Yeah.
But we got a 4-bedroom house for the 5 of us. And we just made it work, basically. We lived there for 2 years. And then we were kind of more settled into like day jobs and stuff. So we were able to branch out and get some space and stuff, which was nice. Yeah. Because living together got stressful. Like all 5 of us every day. And then being on the tour and coming back and just the same guys every day. Like,
yeah. Oh, it was insane.
Sometimes I'm like, oh, I can't wait to go to work.
Well, that's that kind of make or break, because that either like tears you apart from your best friends, or you guys just form a bond that's like unbreakable.
Yeah, it was a little bit of both, but it only formed a stronger bond.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's nice, being in a band and sharing small quarters. It really is like you have your bad days, and like there's that thing of like loving your homie even when they're in their worst fucking mood, and you know them well enough to like understand what they're going through and kind of know what they need, and just like give each other the space.
Well put.
So, man, like you guys, like we've kind of tapped into have an incredible like roots reggae sound, deep harmonies, and you spoke some on your inspirations of those styles of music, and that it was a side project for more of like a grunge band. But I do want to still lead more into like what drove you into that more roots reggae style, dub style. I'm sure it wasn't just the name, which came first, but
well, one of the first like really roots stuff we got into in high school, we would just basically like smoke blunts to it like every day. But like Augustus Pablo, Ital Dub, that record we all listened to like daily, and then Peter Tosh legalized it.
Yeah, big youth record.
And like, there was some
Screaming Target. Yeah, that was always on in the blunt crew.
Yeah, there were some pretty good record stores like around us and stuff, and we just raid the reggae section, and it would always be like 70s Jamaican stuff, like compilations with like King Tubby and Scientist and all that stuff, and like Lee Perry, and you'd come up on some good stuff for sure, like somewhat obscure, but like classic to us.
Yeah, the mystery of it all always seemed really cool too, because it's like different versions of songs you've heard, and you're like trying to figure out what it is and who played on it, and it's like this kind of crazy puzzle. Like roots reggae is like the most mysterious like genre, especially trying to figure out who did what. It's always disguised with some band name, and you can't even tell. So like that whole thing was just fascinating, and like so that's part of it. Just the sound was like nothing else. They opened up the doors for us as far as like how weird reggae can get.
And reggae is so like universal. We were playing like a lot of like hardcore punk and stuff before that, which like isn't as universal. So it made a lot more sense to just focus on the other music that we like love. So we just dove into roots and just branched out from there.
Yeah, it's a little more positive, less like
less exhausting.
The punk scene is fun for a little while, but it was like it's a lot of like parties and straight like the shows aren't
intimidating. It's intimidating.
Yeah, playing a reggae show is like everyone you meet super upbeat and positive, and it's just a whole other vibe. So it's cool.
Reggae is for everybody. So
reggae can be a lot of things for sure.
And what's fun about reggae too is if the room calls for it, if the energy calls for it, you double time, and now you're playing ska, which is like a mellow punk, and you're kind of already there anyway. So you can uproot it quickly as well.
You learn about all these connections, like the Clash, like find out about reggae artists through them and all kinds of. Like you find out how connected everything was.
Bad Brains.
Kind of the reggae rebel mentality kind of went hand in hand with the punk mentality. I feel like
some of the lyrics are like similar in a way. Like it's just really angry and like rebel music, but it's just sounds a little more palatable to people. You can say some kind of intense shit over reggae and have it be like palatable because it just sounds so nice. You know what I mean? People will just be like, all right, yeah, that's fine. Like you can put a big heavy message on a reggae group.
Bob Marley.
Bob Marley says some.
Yeah, and two of my personal favorite reggae dub genre albums ever are Tim Armstrong's reggae album and Bad Brains dub album. And Tim Armstrong, from Rancid and Bad Brains, both of those are punk bands that had gotten to the reggae dub sector eventually, and they're two of my favorite albums ever. And you guys have mentioned that you were kind of doing the Bad Brains, maybe covers or style or whatever, and them coming up in DC, huge political city, obviously, but Dave Grohl's talked about it a lot before he came out to Seattle with Nirvana and all that, growing up in the DC scene and the punk and the angst out there. And then you think of New York City and all the underground out there on the East Coast as well. And it's just really interesting because you had mentioned it, John Brown's Body and Giant Panda, Thunder Body as well is another band I love from out there. It's a lot of similar sound, and I certainly don't mean that. I think sometimes people take offense to that because everyone wants to be original. It's cool that area, the reggae scene, has a sound. And in my opinion, it's probably my favorite sound of North American reggae scenes. The San Diego scene has a sound as well. Us up here, we kind of call our style rainy day reggae because we're in the clouds. We're not in the sun all the time. So we're more like minor keys, dubby stuff, darker things. And I think the Florida scene is very different, obviously. And I just think it's really cool to hear you guys, your influences, because there's a lot going on in the New England area with all sorts of different genres. And for you guys to come out of it with the sound that you have, I just think is really awesome.
Yeah, there is a lot of jam influence too. And we had some darker stuff too when we first started out.
For sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of like funk and jam music up there, so that was a big part of our upbringing too.
Yeah.
I feel like the Southwest doesn't. I mean, especially San Diego and LA, like they don't go for the jam thing as much. Like like Fish doesn't ever come here. Like, for example, I've seen them once since we moved here. Like, but yeah, it's funny. Like, it's just a different. It's great for a reggae band because I love reggae here. Can't get enough of it. And then we do a lot of the old roots covers too. So, which is also big down here. So like a lot of like 60s and 70s, like Motown and stuff is still huge in San Diego, I feel like too. So
is that 70s?
Older crowds will recognize.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Oh no, I was just saying sometimes like if we're playing, we see some older heads in the crowd.
Yeah.
You play something that they recognize.
Drop a Temptations cover.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's nice. I was curious, like we had talked about, you guys raiding record stores and kind of finding those old gems that have been cast aside. We play a bunch of like Toots songs and Steel Pulse and things like that in our repertoire as well. Was the 70s style reggae more that rootsy style? Was that on purpose? Obviously you're influenced by it, but do you just start kind of jamming that because that's what you heard and it became comfortable, so you stayed there? Ryan, again, at least again from what we hear, from what you do currently, you're being the lead singer. Is that a style that you're most comfortable singing? Do you guys just like the harmony style? Like, is that something that you went after or you just kind of fell into?
I would say yes to all of that. I think we were listening to it a lot, so it was kind of natural. It's like we were listening to tons of 70s and early 80s, late 70s dub and reggae, and fell, basically just we're listening to it all day. So when you come up with something, it's always going to be influenced by what you listen to, and it was just sort of natural progression. But like we did make a conscious choice early in the band that we wanted to basically be like late 70s to early 80s, like roots reggae style. It was a conscious choice, but then it was also natural because it was like all we were listening to.
It took a while to settle into it. The first couple albums definitely didn't sound like 70s reggae.
Right, that's true, yeah.
And
we worked with a producer that plays drums and also like produces and records and mixes the 10-Foot Ganja Plant. Like he's in that band.
Mm-hmm.
So we met him at a show we played with the Itals. I gave him like our horrible CD that we had all the time. And like a month or two later, he like messaged us and was like, I hear potential in there. Like you guys should come and like record.
I don't know how.
Yeah.
Wow. That's hilarious.
And we were like, that would be great. Like, of course, as always, we were, money's tough. So we were like, yeah, someday for sure. And he like replied like, it's a tight window. Like you should definitely do this.
Yeah. He put the pressure on, which was good.
And it was because we did a single with him and he taught us more like than we've ever learned musically ever.
Yeah.
He kind of like held our hand in understanding like what was actually happening in these songs that we love. Like who's doing what, like who's not doing what. And like, basically like we follow that formula, like, but also, it's us playing our music. And, I always kind of thought that like the fact that we used to play like punk and stuff, maybe there's a little, if there's like any heavy edge to our music, it's probably with that in mind that like we once were playing this heavy ass shit. Like very like thrashy hardcore. Like that was Corey and I were in a very like 30-second songs. One song got down from 45 seconds. We recorded every album, and it got down to what, like 3 seconds by the last single?
Probably like 7 or something.
Yeah, 7 seconds.
It's just like, and then,
Just like there's more chords in that than like a reggae song.
Oh, yeah.
6 chords.
7 seconds.
yeah.
2 parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that
was
also,
fun though. That shit
it
was fun to play.
but it got exhausting.
Yeah.
I mean, going
You can
back
only-
to what we were saying.
You can only do that for so long.
Andrew was the screamer. He was the hardcore singer.
It was
Oh, and then
violent
you
side
like
of me.
you played guitar, but like you didn't really play it. You
Eventually, I
just have it
couldn't.
just. You would just have it just hanging there and just singing, and like it was funny. Like it was different eras of all these bands, and like I said, it was just too many bands at once. And reggae was just like in all of our minds. Like this is like the way better option.
I was in like 3 different jam bands on the side.
Yeah, you were.
Wait, what was the name of? I need at least one name.
Slippery
People.
Slippery People.
Yeah.
There was Grains of Paradise.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah,
I love band names.
We did all different kinds of stuff. I feel like what we didn't answer.
We did.
That's so awesome.
We were in La 1. Yeah, La 1. There was Imodium, Firing Squad. Me and Ryan's first band was Sumo Monkey Giants.
I just realized when Corey and I were looking for a band name, Andrew suggested Bellyache as a band name.
Bellyache.
And he was like dying laughing, but he was like, no, you got to do it. And I realized that your band name at that time was Imodium, which is a belly medication, a stomach medication.
It was so different.
Fire.
It was
Fire.
like with a O.
That would be sick, like 2 bands touring together, Bellyache and Imodium.
Oh man, you would have to play in that order every night.
Oh, man. Before that, hot dogs.
Diarrhea.
Stereo chili. Stereo chili. That's a band that came up in the word. Stereo chili.
Stereo chili.
Between 2 people who just ate chili. Stereo chili.
Chili and Stereo is the name of their first
Alternate.
album. Chili and Stereo. But
That's awesome. It's interesting that you mentioned that too, because you guys coming from kind of jam scene, thrash punk scene into 70s reggae. And your first album, Avoid the Pier, is dub heavy. What, again, if we're talking like 70s reggae specifically, obviously dub is an element of that. But a lot of it is kind of, rock steady, lovers rock. Where did the dub heavy influence come in on the first album? Because the next 2 albums aren't as dub heavy, obviously.
yeah, I think for me, King Tubby was like the biggest thing. Like hearing what King Tubby did to the sound, it was just like, how can we do that? And Scientists, those 2 like were early influences, like huge. All that classic, just like hearing a version of a song that we knew and then hearing it all played, all screwed with, you know what I mean?
We were into a lot of like experimental like stuff. We would like trip out at practice and like practice for 6 hours straight, like playing like really weird shit. And I think
we've been there.
Yeah, exactly. So I think our music reflected it a little bit more so back then. Obviously, we would be playing like 2 chords over each other and stuff like that. Like a lot of songs were just like, they kind of went out there. And like on Avoid the Pier, we did like some really weird recording techniques and stuff. I remember blowing a trumpet into a bathtub full of water, and like we took a YouTube clip of some lady giving birth in a tub, and like we used the sound and we put it like on the last track.
Yeah, the last thing you hear on the album Avoid the Pier, if you go to the very end of the song Avoid the Pier, is like the sound of some woman giving birth on YouTube that we added in. It's really subtle.
Like,
but it's
playing with a bathtub. It was recorded in my parents' basement and Sean's parents' bathroom.
Not the woman giving birth.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, but and then because also the trumpet, like we were just like trying to do basically like we grew up in this. Okay, so we grew up in Bridgewater, there's this thing called the Bridgewater Triangle, and it's like this notoriously haunted place. If you look up the Bridgewater Triangle, it's kind of like the Bermuda Triangle. It's just a place that everyone talks about crazy stuff happening to them there, like of all sorts, like anything you can imagine, like huge snakes and
Sasquatch,
monsters, and it just
looks like pterodactyls. I know a few people who claim to have seen them.
Yeah, so we were all like obsessed with that shit growing up, like just hauntings and all this stuff and weird. And then like we were like, what if we just made really trippy, kind of creepy music? We were kind of just doing it naturally too. And then we set up all these microphones in the room and brought everything in Kyle's house that made a noise into the room and just like recorded 10 minutes of all these noises and like kind of edited it down.
Fun.
Then added layers and more layers, and then added that woman giving birth and the trumpet in the tub and all that shit. And that's what Avoid the Pier, the song is. And then there's a clip of us playing live, this like jam in the middle of it.
It's so cool. A 10-minute song, and I've listened to your guys' music a bunch, but kind of prepping for the show, I was getting my ears fresh into your stuff, and going from that album into the rest was a trip. It was like two separate bands, and I think we kind of feel similar.
Yeah, we don't play anything really from that album anymore, but like personally, I think speak for all of us, but yeah, we were into like all things psychedelic also kind of at the time, and that's what it was attractive about dub to me. It was like very psychedelic, and
we were also trying to pull, like, I still love that album for what we did, but we were trying to pull off some stuff that we heard that we had no experience playing. Yeah. So it came off like a lot more complex. Like we didn't realize that you can really simplify stuff and still have it be really psychedelic. Crazy, but like we were trying to do it in a kind of a weird, complex kind of way. And we still I still appreciate that album for what it was, but we also started writing just really like, I feel like all of a sudden the songs started just flowing after that, like around the like in 2013 and 14, like all these songs just started happening. Like, cause we learned, like Andrew was saying earlier, we did a single with Craig Welsh from 10 Foot, and that was the Heat and Water single. And that song had 1 million parts and it was so complicated. And he was like, all right, pick one drum beat and one bass line and use that over the whole thing for all these chords. You can use most of those chords, but we cut out all these parts, and just like simplifying an idea into one groove was the thing. And then that helped us, inspired us to write a bunch of songs.
And that's what producers do, which is so awesome. We had never worked with a producer. We did Grown Deep. We did in our basement as well at home, and Mikey mixed and mastered the whole thing. Magic was like playing on a drum pad, not a drum kit, and it was crazy. And then Family Tree we did with kind of a homie in a studio locally, but it was still, not. I mean, bless his heart, we love the guy to death, but it was still a great step for us, but not where we needed to be. And then we eventually did the Spark at Tracktown Records with this gentleman, Victor, who has been recording in South America for like 25 years, reggae music. And he had Magic playing 15 different snare drums, 2 or 3 per song, different keys and all these things. It was pretty incredible to have his input on songs.
Wow. Yeah, makes a huge difference for sure.
Yeah, an outside ear to us is like everything, just
we had our experimental days, and it was a learning process. And then I feel like that experience of actually going to a real studio,
being produced,
we kind of learned how to refine what we're trying to do. Like you can still get experimental, but you don't have to get so weird that you make people uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, we also, to be completely real, we had to edit a lot on Avoid the Pier to get it to where, because we tried this method of just recording so much stuff, like record everything you can find, and then we kind of like cut it down into like what works. Whereas like, when you go to pay for a studio, you're just gonna do what works and really build it strong, instead of like all this like try everything and then delete it type mentality. Like
it was very over mixed too for like probably 2 years of mixing like type thing.
Sean, our old bass player, had Pro Tools, and he would bring his computer like wherever, and we would all hang out, and we would like mix, and like we would have some beers, and like would get all really into like mixing this one song, and then you listen to it the next day and you're like, oh, it sounds like shit, start over.
Classic.
And art, like not everyone can just mix. I think it's like, I don't know. And some songs are just so weird. You're like, I don't know how are we going to make that work? It's nice to have an outside ear.
I love though that it's just like a fun memory now. Like, remember that time we brought all that shit that made noise into the room and just like recorded it? Like, that's just being kids and like having fun and learning, and like that's an awesome memory.
Imitating like the Halloween music, kind of like, I feel like we were going for like a Halloween, like one of those songs you play out the window on Halloween, to, like, creep out the neighbors.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of mixed with the Live Dead. The idea of the album Live Dead, and like how early in the Grateful Dead's career they would mix like live recordings with studio stuff.
Yeah, I think it sounds really cool when it's done correctly. I think that idea is really awesome. And we want to talk to you guys about some road stories too, road stories and memories, and you guys can bring up anything you want to. But also like playing that style of music, playing dub live is hard to do it properly. If you don't have the full mixer on stage with you to do the live delays and the pedals and all that stuff, like you can't fake that stuff. And oftentimes bands try to replicate dub songs live and they just frankly can't because they don't have the same engineering. Just curious if that was a challenge for you guys early on. And you said you don't play a lot of songs from that album anymore. So maybe that's not so much an issue these days, but just kind of how was transferring that out of the studio dub heavy onto stage when you started touring?
We kind of improvise a lot, but in a different way. I think when we play live, especially back then, we did a lot of improvisation. So we would just do like different versions of things. I think a lot of the times, and it would just morph. Since we play a lot together, it would just take its own. Like the version we played live was never that close to the version, especially back in the day. It was always changing everything. So listening a lot, and you have to listen to everyone's, like, I have to listen to Corey, and Corey has to listen to me and all that stuff. So when he drops out, I drop out, and it has to be very like coordinated. And a lot of times you have to talk about it beforehand, improvising a full dynamic thing is tough,
Yeah, that's what we did basically until we toured like Light Flashes. Once Light Flashes was out and we had a Light Flashes tour to California and Colorado and stuff, we like tried to learn the dropouts like on that album. We tried to learn like every section, and we kind of got into that. That's what we'd still do, like with Gold Fever, we try to do like the dropouts that are on the album, and it's you can just train yourself to know it. But it's easier than improvising like dub, because we've never had a sound guy. We just have ourselves.
Yeah, you can do a lot of like subtle dub work without it being like even going to drum and bass and having some cool sounds. Like it makes a big difference to an audience. Not every show is going to have that. So
Textures.
Yeah, just to give the audience some kind of dynamic where it comes down in energy or just more bass or whatever. Like, nice.
Yeah, and with like roots and dub, it's like playing the space, and that can be really tricky where it's like what isn't being played sometimes is the most important.
For sure.
Yeah, Sky brought up like road stories and stuff, and it just made me want to tangent into you guys probably saw me perform on one of my hardest times. I was sick as could be. I was like down in the bus, laying down, and I still performed that night. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to pull those kind of maneuvers, but it just, honestly, I wanted to bring it up back when we brought up bellyache and Imodium, but
sick as hell, like at something or another.
Yep.
Yeah, no, so like I wanted to thank you guys for the support, because you guys being there definitely made me still want to do it, and you guys side stage like rooting me on definitely kept me alive.
Still killed it.
Yeah, I don't remember. I feel like you absolutely killed it. Like you could tell by looking at you that you weren't happy, but you sounded great.
I remember seeing you in the bus look pretty dead.
Yeah. For sure.
That was some of the worst I've ever felt on the road. And that was in Talent, Oregon. So that wasn't far from home, but I just got super sick right at the end. And yeah, I remember some of you guys being like, no, dude, like that was one of the best shows of the of the run, but I was like sitting there like towel over my head, like bucket next to the drums.
Yeah, sometimes the shows that are like the toughest can be like really fun for the audience because like one random example is, I forget, were we in Florida? I think it was Florida where the power was going out. Like it went out and then it kept coming back on and going out. But it was only during the 2 Hall & Oates songs that we played during the set, right? And it was
Weird.
like at the end towards like the intense part, and then the power would go out, and like
just drums.
It kind of made it sick. Like in a way, it kind of sucked it at first, but then like the power would pop back on, and the audience would go nuts, and like the drums kept going, and we were kind of singing and like clapping and shit, hoping that the power would come back on. And then we finished the song, and like it was kind of sick, but like sometimes like weird mishaps can make the show in a funny way. Like, you know, just seeing you power through it was special. You know what I mean?
Well, and rolling with the punches is so important, like keeping the drums going or keeping the audience into it. It's the worst thing you can do is just stop, you know, and like be kind of uncomfortable. So
yeah, I've seen bands like I won't even say who, but I saw someone singing and like the feedback happened and they just stopped dead. Like it's that, you know, the end of the world. And they're just like, what the hell? Like make this huge deal about it. And like, if you don't act like nothing's happening, the audience is going to not take you seriously.
Well, and so much of that just comes with, you know, being on the road and having those things happen to you, because, you know, when you're young and you're playing your first handful of shows and that happens and there's a full house, like you panic. There's nothing else you can do. You're just like, oh shit, this is bad news. And you stop. It's hard to play through it. And every band has had tough situations, but that's great that you guys have powered through. What's maybe just an example or two of some of the biggest shows you've played, whether it's magnitude of the show, album release, local show, first one in San Diego, supporting somebody, opening for a bigger band, crowd size, whatever it is, big city you wanted to break into, however you think about it. What are maybe 2 or 3 of the biggest shows you guys have played along your journey so far?
I think in Massachusetts, like our biggest shows at the time before we moved to Cali were like opening for Shaggy at Wilbur Theater, and then also opening for Badfish, the Sublime cover band, like at Paradise and
they
stuff.
would bring a lot of people.
Yeah, those were like our biggest shows at the time.
It was so nerve-wracking because like the Paradise was kind of like a local legend in Boston, and like just to be that young and kind of play to a full house, it was so nerve-wracking. And like, I would always lose my stick. I'd be so sweaty, I'd lose my sticks.
Yeah.
One of my favorite sets of all time, though, I think just because of the situation, was we played Long Beach. I mean, we played One Love Festival in Long Beach a few years back, and our set got like kind of screwed up. Like the set time got kind of screwed up early. We played like first. And because of some issues at the door, like our sets got screwed up, but the Giant Panda was supposed to play like later in the afternoon and they didn't make it. And they offered us that set time. Like they were like, you guys can play a second set because our first set got kind of screwed up. Yeah. And it was like a way better set time too. It was like afternoon at a festival, like a pretty good sized festival. And it was just like, you know, pretty victorious feeling. Cause it was like, at first you're like, shit, that sucked. Cause like not that many people saw our first set, you know, and then it all of a sudden just totally redeemed by like a whole second set. It was awesome.
Yeah, and we were also wicked stoked to see Giant Panda at that festival. So we were bummed, but they had a snowstorm and couldn't make it. So we felt honored to take their slot.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, I mean, festivals are probably like the biggest one. Like, Love, obviously. I don't know. It's not a great show.
Barrington, Levy, we played
Observatory. Yeah, San Diego, the Observatory, sold out show.
What was the one at the Wilbur Theater? That was Badfish.
Shaggy and Badfish, probably.
Yeah, Wilbur Theater is a great venue in Boston. But yeah, I mean, festivals are awesome because I mean, it's just so much.
St. Pete too, Janice live in St. Pete with the Rise Roots. That was amazing show. That's a great venue.
What a dope venue too, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the moments when you get like the other slot at you know, like the the giant panda situation, it's like you really got to step up to the plate, because all of a sudden you're like, and like you said, Kyle, like your palms start sweating right before you go on stage. You're like, all right, this is a big audience right now. This is like the evening slot. But when you go into it, you play confidently and you come out the other end, it's like you're only stronger afterwards.
Yeah.
I'll add in one speaking of pushing through, just hard times on stage. The first time we played with Mike Love was a set of a few shows in the Southeast. And, we've been huge fans for years, and I'd worked really hard for a long time to get us onto that run with them. And we show up, our first show was in Decatur, Georgia, which is outside of Atlanta. And we show up and we go to meet Mike, and he's very gracious. He's just, one of the sweetest human beings ever, but he can barely talk. And we're like, that's weird. That doesn't really sound like him. We don't really talk. We all sound check. We do our thing, whatever. Well, he goes through a show, does his thing, no problem. After the show, we're breaking down, loading each other's vehicles. We're helping him load out, whatever. And we start talking, and he's just not talking, like literally no words. And I'm like, damn, he doesn't seem like the rude kind of guy. What the hell's going on? And his manager comes over to us and goes, oh, hey guys, just FYI, like Mike lost his voice like 4 days ago, and he's not going to talk to you at all. Like, he can't talk. He's just singing because he's from Hawaii and now he's in Georgia and he's got to finish this tour. So don't egg him on, and talk to him extra. So we're like, cool, no problem. You would not know. He started bringing it up because it was really brutal on his voice that he was telling the crowd. He was like apologizing almost. But if you've ever seen Mike Love perform, he's one of the most passionate artists I've ever seen in my life, everything he does. And his singing was spot on, but he couldn't even talk to the crowd in between songs. And it was one of the most inspiring moments I've ever seen in music at all. And we're just sitting there side stage like, this dude is a true lion making it happen. And it was just incredible. So shouts out to all the artists and the people pushing through hard times, because, man, it's not as easy as it looks 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Love just headlined the festival we played this weekend too.
Yeah, let's quickly talk about that. And then we have a couple more points that we'd like to get through, you guys, before we get out of here. And again, we super appreciate you guys' time finally joining up. We've been trying to do this with you for quite a while. So, I don't want to get into quarantine COVID stuff too much unless you guys want to bring it up for personal reasons, whatever, you're welcome to. But all bands have been shut down for at least a year. The Southeast has opened up. The South has opened up. East Coast has opened up a little bit. California and Arizona a little bit. Up in the Pacific Northwest, we are locked down still. It's springtime. No shows on the horizon. You guys just played, though, in Arizona recently. How was it to get back out on stage? How was the feel? How were maybe the protocols of playing that show? Were you comfortable doing it? Was the crowd receptive? Just take us through that show really quickly. It's the first time in a year and a half almost, right, that you've played a show.
Yeah, it's been like a year and a couple months. The last show before that was Arizona Roots, so it was in Phoenix as well. But the show felt like amazing. I mean, like I said, like we practice every week anyway, so we play all the time. But playing to like a crowd of maybe like 400 or 500 people or something like that, and they were like completely into it. Like they were there for the music. The energy was like really good. Personally, like we might have been like maybe a little nervous to kind of make our debut again because it had been so long. And with Andrew on bass now, like it was the first time kind of revealing like this 4-piece thing we've been doing. But the set went amazing. The crowd like loved it. So it felt really good for sure. The festival itself was really laid back too. It was in Buckeye, Arizona, but everyone was smoking weed and there was, a couple bars. Everybody was having fun for sure.
Yeah, it was a good time. We just went for the day. We couldn't go for all 3 days, unfortunately. There was some acts I would have loved to see, but it was a great time.
Yeah, the Arizona family is like really tight for us. Like we have a lot of really strong fans over there. So
I feel like people are so hungry to go see a show now too. So it's like you just get that like people are just amped up to see you guys play.
Definitely.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite. Obviously it's been a while, so it just felt really good. But it was one of my favorite recent show memories from even the last few years. Just it was super fun and felt really good. I was glad to be well rehearsed because I feel like the nerves would have gotten the best of me. You know what I mean? We were like, we like drilled some stuff before this. Like we had some stuff we wanted to try and some new material and some new, things. And we really like got
practiced that set for like a month or more.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's awesome.
So good.
Smart.
For sure.
Another.
Oh, great. For sure. It was fun. I like realized how much how every note mattered. It matters so much more like when you're playing live than like when you're it's easier to hit it right practicing than when you're on the stage. It's crazy, like the way the time moves and the way you're thinking about it and just the speed that like you react to play the note. Everything's just very like
bass is tiring. Bass is what I feel like it's pretty exhausting to that, like to stay at that tempo if a song's really fast or like that it hurts.
Really slow.
Yeah. And then calluses, like the calluses are intense with
Bass
bass
is tough for sure. And singing while playing bass. Big up Benny.
Well,
playing bass and singing is tough.
Yeah, everyone
Sure.
everyone has a problem with that. Cheeky's does it. He always talks about how difficult it is.
Yeah, James from Panda.
And his bass lines are heavy.
Amazing at that.
I feel like he writes his bass lines to interlock with his vocals so well that like it's built for that. You know what I mean? Like he did it, he wrote it that way. So, but it's still like, I don't know how he does it. Cause like you said, every note's so important on the bass. If you screw it up, like the audience feels bass screw ups way more, like it just seems like if you, especially in reggae, it's the lead instrument half the time. So it's gotta be solid. Andrew killed it though on that.
Nice, bud. Dude, I've heard people, people come to me and say like, oh, playing drums and singing or rapping is like the hardest. And I'm often like, dude, I don't know. I think bass, like syncopated rhythms and like how the vocals kind of fall off or fall on, like, I think that's way harder. So props. Yeah.
But singing and playing anything is amazing to me. For sure.
You know what's the toughest though? Singing and playing didgeridoo at the same time is really hard. It's really hard, I promise.
Yeah, the tone is just not the same. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna screw with your tone.
Well, and even saying, Andrew, like the playing in the practice room is way easier. It's like when you're on stage, there's so much more information your brain is going through, and like how time moves and things that are catching your eye or just like thoughts that are running through your head about the sound or whatever it may be. It's like so much more going on.
And if you like suddenly lose your place or something, there's no like, hey, where are we at? Like, I didn't happen to me at this last show, but there have been shows where like suddenly I'm like, wait, is second verse or the first verse? And then it's like, oh no, like
happens all the time.
Vortex.
I lost it.
No, we played 5 verses because I don't know where I am.
There has been too many instances with us on stage, especially when we don't play a song for a while. And I don't know, you don't have a song in your set for the tour or whatever, and you're in a city you play often, people know your music and they're like, play this one. And you're like, all right, it's been a while. And then you do it. And we kind of, you guys feel it too. I know you do, but you have that connection after 10 years where you can look across stage and just know, like I can look at Magic knowing his verse is coming up. And by the look in his eye, I can tell if he knows what the lyrics are or not. And if he doesn't, then I might jump in on the mic and like start the verse. And then he comes in, because all you need to know is the first couple words. Once you get the first couple words, you're good. But we have that look of like, bro, it's out. I don't have it. But thankfully, we have so many of us that can jump in and save the day if you need to. But I have been there, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a scary thing. Especially if you have, when you're trying to keep a good amount of songs in your head. That's why it's nice to have we used to just not prepare a lot of times back in the day too. We would just write sets as we went, or we'd call out songs as we go. And like, that can be really cool if it's done right. But like, if it's not done right, it's really not cool. You know what I mean?
And like working out a set, like we have been doing for the past, like 4 years or whatever, working out a set and like transitions for like new transitions, like every time and stuff. It keeps it more interesting for us and obviously for the crowd too, to hear something cool, like, or hear a song like a different way.
Yeah, we called out songs forever, and then it was like there's way too much blank space between songs. It's like you're looking at each other and trying to like,
or like the worst possibility is you suggest a song and someone's like, nah, and then it's like, all right, sick. Well, what are we gonna play then?
So we basically have a rule that like, sometimes you play those nights where like you're not playing an hour, you're playing like 3 hours, you're covering the whole thing. So you're playing the covers and whatever. And we'll have a set for the first 1, 2, and the final like 8 songs. Sometimes we're just like, look, like if we've been here before, what do you guys want to hear? What haven't we played yet? Like shout out a group. If we know one of their songs we'll play, and we kind of have fun with that. But basically we established a rule years ago that was straight up. Like if I say, hey guys, let's play this one, and Magic goes, nah, I'm not feeling it, you can't say no unless you have an immediate filler to be like, nah, but how about this one? And if you come back with it, then it's almost like, all right, let's just play that one and move on. You can't say no. And then everyone's like, well, because you're right. It's super unprofessional. And look, when you're in a bar kicking it for 4 hours with people, they don't care and it's fine. But when you're on a bigger stage and you're in a more established position, that is a no-go. And you can tell with you guys that you're well rehearsed, you're very clean, you all are on the same page, and it comes across in the music and the flow of the show, which I don't think we understood the magnitude of the flow of the show for a very long time. And that was just being raw musicians for a long time, and not having somebody outside the band coaching us. It was just learning on the fly. And you can tell with you guys that it's clean, it's polished. You know what you're going to play, you play it. And it flows really well. It's a tight set, and it's nice to listen to, and it's easy to watch because you guys are, constantly moving. There's no dead air, and if there is, it's on time to get a drink, say what's up to the crowd, rep merch, whatever. It's on purpose to take a break. It's not oh shit, I got nothing to do here, so somebody says something to the crowd, because people feed off that quickly.
We started to see like certain bands, like there's this really heavy vibe when a band's like really in control and also just really knows exactly what's happening. Like
absolutely.
The Agrolites are great about that too. Like they're like really, they look like everything's super clean. Like they're all wearing like kind of it's like not a uniform, but they all look like they're in the same band. Like everything looks right. It's super, set list super tight. Everyone obviously knows what song is next, because like it starts without any conversation, and all that shit's just, it hit us really hard, like seeing that live. I think like seeing certain bands that really took control, it was like, that's what we want to do. We saw John Brown's Body at the House of Blues, and we were like on mushrooms, and it was unreal to see how they were so in control of the audience and so in control of the show. And like the set was like absolutely flawless. And like hearing Elliot would sing into like they'd end a song, and he would change keys and sing in the next song without anyone playing. And like, it just like, he would set the tone for the next song. And it was just this constant flow. Like you said, it just doesn't stop. Like, yep. That's what I want.
Groundation is one of my favorite bands ever. And their show is like that. Harrison controls the entire room and controls the band, but they are so dialed in after 20 years that there is no blank space for an hour and a half set, first of all, but they almost don't break sound at all. They just have an intro and an outro to every single song throughout the show. So there's just 2 hours of music straight, but it doesn't sound like a blob. Like it's not, it's very clean, but it just waves it out. And Dave Matthews Band is another band that notoriously plays 3 hours straight, basically without breaking sound. And they're so good at coming in and out of jams, transitioning songs, playing one song, breaking into another one, and then going back to the original song, which I know is a big part of the jam scene. And when bands are well rehearsed and connected on stage, man, it's almost beyond the music at that point. Like that's a show. That's the difference between going to see a band play music and going to see a show, is how the band produces the music to you. And that is something we've been trying to grow into over the years.
Yep.
Yeah. it's all like, I feel like it builds up over time. It's like these little tiny things. You're like, oh, that little tiny thing worked. That little thing worked. And sometimes you'll spend like 4 hours on something at practice, and then like 2 people notice it out of the 100 people or whatever that are there. And I don't even think that matters. I think the 2 people that noticed it are like, that's sick. I think a bunch of little things build up over time, like as you guys probably know, and like transitions, and then how to kind of fill the void when there's awkwardness or anything like that. Like, yeah, we try to work on that for sure, and it gets more comfortable as the time goes on.
Yeah, I think part of that was like touring with bands that were a lot tighter than us, kind of seeing that, like how well you can orchestrate a show.
Yeah.
And it's something that we paid more and more attention to as time went on, for sure.
I think Arise Roots was probably the first band that we toured with that like had like a set for the tour, and we just noticed like every night that it was just like sick. Like it was so dialed in. At the time, we used to tour with like 4 set lists for a tour, and we would like switch it out depending on how we feel. But eventually we just learned, like, if you really just dial in one, like, it's good.
Which I think and probably not just me, but I was definitely resistant to that at first too, because it's like you feel like it's going to take spontaneity out, but like there's something way more powerful about a show that's well planned. It hits harder.
Yeah, it's a show, like you were saying. It's not just like playing music. It's like a whole show that's like orchestrated to be that.
If you go to a Broadway show, they're not improvising the lines. Like, it's not different every night. It's Romeo and Juliet, like, every night. So it's like, to have something really tight, if that works, it's going to work. And like, you could even see it a few nights in a row. Like we were saying with the Rise Roots, like I would watch that set every night, and it would blow my mind every night. Those transitions, like, oh shit, that's so good. Like, yeah, every time. It doesn't really get old. Like, you can see a band 3-5 nights in a row and like see that.
I still have those transitions in my head.
Yeah. And you like wait for it. It's almost better the second time. It's like seeing a movie you're like, oh, this is that part.
Yeah, and you start to learn from it more because you're starting to understand actually what they're doing.
Yes.
Now you're like, oh, okay, so that's going into that. Wow, that's clever. Like, we could do that with like our shit.
Yeah, we steal a lot of ideas.
But you wouldn't even know, obviously, because it has nothing to do with, like, it's our sound,
Or we've heard cool, like, listening to live reggae recordings from like the 80s, 70s, whatever. Like, we've also heard some cool transitions, and we've kind of tried to emulate some of those,
adapted some of them for ourselves.
You guys open with a flash too, don't you?
That was just for that tour.
Okay. Well, that's what we saw, and we've been talking about that for years, and doing the kind of a mix up of your own songs. Just what is it, 8 bars or so of a bunch of When that is done properly, that's like Steel Pulse 101, right? But when it's done properly, it's literally like, I hear that for 3 minutes to open the show. That could be it for me. Like, when that's done properly, it's so clean. I get a taste of each of the songs that's going to go down for the night. I absolutely love that done properly.
I forgot. I think we all forgot that we did that.
Yeah. That's so funny because that's like one of the things I remember the most about that run with you guys is the nightly flash. It was like and you're right. It's like the movie. I know it's coming. I'm waiting all day for it, and there it is, and I'm so pumped on it. It was great.
Nice. We should try that again sometime.
You should. It's stellar.
And also, like, even just for us, like, in the smallest way, it's like a little warm up, because you're like, the hardest thing you're going to do all night is that first moment where
absolutely
it's changing for like 3 minutes straight. Like, it's almost like and then you chill into that first song way more, because it's like, now we're grooving. Like, I kind of
like it too, because it's a teaser to the crowd. Like, somebody hears like the chords or the chorus of one of the ones that they like. They're like, oh, here it comes. And then you take it away from them. It's only like, oh shit. Like, but then, 20 minutes later, you actually play the song, and it almost like doubles back on it. It feels good. It's like, oh, okay, they didn't forget about me, and it's a precursor of the show. Like, I absolutely love them, and they have to be done right, but you guys crushed it. It was one of my favorite parts of our run together.
It's definitely something that, like, I feel like only happens like classic reggae, because you don't hear that at like rock shows or anything. Nobody does that.
I was gonna say it totally reminds me of like a OG toaster. When you're watching like a Jamaican DJ, he'll play like, and they'll usually have the vocalists there, and it's like they'll sing a chorus, like woo, 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 like rewind, next song, it's the chorus. It's like all the parts that you know, and then it like cuts into the next song, and yeah. So I feel like it's also an awesome like throwback tribute to Jamaican DJs.
Exactly.
Yeah, it sets the tone too. Like when you see a band like do that first, it's like, oh, they're gonna be really tight. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really well planned.
They practiced this.
Because imagine you do that perfectly, and then the rest of the night sloppy as hell. Like you don't. Once you could definitely. We've done it. You've probably seen it at a Dubbest show. Yeah. You guys have probably seen it, but yeah, it kind of sets the tone. It's like, all right, that's what level we're at for this set, you know.
Yeah, I feel like the only way it gets sloppier from there is if there's like a bottle of liquor on the stage. That's when you know it's like halfway through the set, the band's sloppy.
Open bar at a party or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Those are some of the sloppiest shows we've ever played. It's just playing parties where there's unlimited booze and stuff.
Yeah.
I definitely learned early on how to like hold yourself like to a limit, because it's really easy when there's like a open keg like next to the stage and it's like you have hours before you play. It's like it's one thing to catch a buzz after you start the show and you're like playing and you're already in the flow, but if you go on stage with a solid buzz, it's so hard to come back and like be tight at all.
In the mud, it's like you're in slow motion, like trying to catch up to the band. Like, oh shit!
Outside of the private gigs, I feel like we've always been pretty good at that. Like we've always tried to keep it professional and not be like fucked up on stage.
Especially more recently.
Yeah.
It's important. Yeah, that's a growing thing. You definitely learn like early on, you're like, free beer? Like, yes. But then you're like, okay, we got a job to do. The beers will still be there.
Touring, like you can't do that every night. You can't just be raging for 8 hours.
You shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean,
honestly, the worst part about it for me is like, I'm sure you know Magic. Like, I think we talked about it a couple times, but when like, yeah, when you gotta piss, and you're playing drums and it's like your knees are coming up. And
And taking a piss break in a show is the worst thing you can do. You know,
all of a sudden I got to tell a joke and I'm not funny, so it's like,
yeah, we were really lucky. I would always be like, because this has happened, and I would look
Sky,
at Sky,
play Didge, 20 minutes, go.
Like say something, then play Didge. I'll be right back. Like. Because yeah, that's a tough one when you're sitting on your bladder.
It happens, man. You know, and for the listeners, kind of like, what the hell are you guys talking about? Look, you know, we're on stage for 3 hours sometimes with a break or two. But the reality is, I mean, like you got to go, and there's 5 of us, 6 of us on stage. I mean, you don't always have the same schedule or whatever. You know what I mean? And like, and honestly, we just realized, like, look, if it's a big time show, if it's a big stage, you're not going. That's just how it is. You got a 45-minute set anyway, hold it and get out of there. If it, if you're in a club one night, it's a Wednesday night, you're jamming, it's, whatever you're vibing. Honestly, dude, like I got to go, man. It's gonna be way better if I'm comfortable. So I'll be right back. You guys cover up and I'll be there, and it is part of the business, unfortunately, but that's funny, man. Yeah. The drummer position, yikes.
I was always jealous of Kenny because he would just jump off stage and like,
yeah,
the
later,
drummer
guys.
Definitely does have the hardest job. It's like you got to hold it down. If the drums aren't there, Ryan's telling a joke, And
you don't want that.
Especially when you overindulge and then it's just a disaster.
Oh, man. I don't know why I thought of this, but like one time we were playing in Salem, Massachusetts, and we went out for a smoke break in between sets. We came back down and these 2 guys were playing our equipment. This one dude was playing the drums. This other guy was playing my keyboard. He had the by design like keyboard synth setting on because that was the last song we had played. And like he was jamming and they were just jamming like, and no one in the bar stopped them. Like it was just, there was like people watching like it was supposed to be happening. It was just like, what? It was so weird.
Yeah, like a couple of people were like up dancing already. And I'm like, who the hell is playing? Who's this guy? Like what the hell?
We like look like dicks, but we're walking in just like, all right, get out of here.
Yeah. It sucks when there's an audience to watch those moments of you have to regulate. Like, all right, like get off my equipment. Yeah.
Or a guy that wanders on stage and starts like grabbing stuff.
One time,
get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, one time we played and we were playing an instrumental. We're playing Iron Paw, instrumental tune. And this crazy drunk, like older guy hops on the stage and he grabs the mic because I'm not singing because it's instrumental. And he starts saying like, I don't know what he meant, but he was saying goodbye to the world. Like he was like saying goodbye to everyone. And like, while we're playing Iron Ball, which is like the super upbeat, like rock stick, fucking happy ass song. And he's like, goodbye. And like saying all this crazy dark shit. And then he kind of like, you know, took, again, no one from the bar like stopped him. Like it was just like, yeah, this has to happen.
Yeah.
You know?
It took a couple minutes for somebody to get him out of there, but it sucks when that happens.
It sucks because you don't want to be the dick that's like, all right, get out of here. But like, you know, you gotta, you know, this is a show. Yeah. This is not part of it.
Yeah, when the club doesn't have security and you have to run your own security, it gets a little tricky sometimes.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of that, the festival we just played, Kareem from Arise Roots was doing a solo set with Chris Brennan playing guitar. And I just heard about this from some of the Arizona people, but they invited someone, they asked if somebody wanted to play a drum for a song, and somebody hopped on stage to play like a Bob Marley cover on a percussion. But it was somebody that has never played music. They were just drunk and trying to party. And then they lingered throughout his whole set. They never left the stage, and he wasn't a dick to kick him off. And there was no security at the festival. So there was some chick that's never played music playing a bongo throughout Kareem's set.
Man.
Yeah. I heard about that the other day. I was like, damn, that sucks.
Yeah, we've had a few situations. Kareem is the ultimate homie, so it doesn't surprise me that it didn't make a move. But like the reality is, I've had so many people ask to play the didgeridoo. People ask Kenny to play his guitar. We've had stuff on the microphone constantly, and it's tough because you know, like 1 out of 50 is actually an incredible musician you're down to jam with and has some awesome spontaneous jam. Most of the time though, dude, it's just kind of like, all right, guys, you did your thing. It's time to go. And frankly, again, and maybe this is me just, you know, growing up and being grumpy, but I'm more than happy these days to kind of like, thanks, dude. Like, time to go. Like, it's time to go. Thanks. Turn the mic off, escort you off stage, you know, and that's where it's nice to have a band manager. I'll tell you what, because if you can do it without a band member doing that, it's a little bit better of a look, but the reality is, man, I am that guy and I'm more than happy to do it. I also take zero, I have zero, flack with people in the front row, especially like dudes, coming up onto ladies and dancing or something like that. And clearly getting past where they're supposed to be or going beyond, having consent and things. Like you can see that from the stage, right? And sometimes I get a look from somebody that looks at me like, dude, I'm stuck. What the hell am I going to do? And I've literally left stage a few times mid-song and gone into the crowd and been like, bro, you need to bounce right now or we're going to shut it down. And it's an uncomfortable place to be, but at some level, dude, like you're a human first, and the show's not going to be as appropriate as you want it to be if you're not in the right element. So it's a strange world that we live when we have many hats like that. And it's obviously not common, but it does happen from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yo, let me transition a little. I'm curious, go back to like the origins, the beginning of you guys. What about the name? I know I've heard a lot of people say it maybe wrong or just differently than you guys intend. There's like different inflections. People ask you like, is it Dubbest? Is it Dubbest? Is it, but I want to hear your guys' story about like the origin of finding that name and owning it.
I know we were like, the actual name got thought of because we were drinking together, 18 or 19 years old, having some beers and like joking around. And we needed a band name. Like, everyone's been in that band that's like eternally needs a name. Like you just never have a good name. So we were kind of in that zone for a while. And I was just thinking like, imagine a band called The Best. Like, I'm pretty sure I said, like, imagine a band called The Best. Like, how douchey is that? Like, you can't even be any more confident than call yourself The Best. And then I think Andrew said, what about Dubbest? And we were just like, well, that's kind of sick. So
it sounded cool. It kind of rolls off the tongue, especially being from Boston. It just sounded cool, like The Best.
Yeah.
That's what we all said.
That's how someone would say the best. They'd be like, "Oh, it was the best fucking sub."
It was the best. Yeah. And it fits the style, right? I mean, like it works out. It's a play on words almost too. And I think it's very creative and it works out.
And like you also like it's hard to find a name that's short that isn't taken. And like it, you know, like you don't like I don't know, it's hard to find a short name. You don't want a long ass name necessarily if you want it to be catchy. So like one word.
Panda.
Yeah, but like
it's
true.
You can just call
them Panda. I know.
You know.
And there are some good bands with long names. It's just I think it's easier to brand and like it's easier to get your name across when it's not this long explanation.
One strong word.
Yeah.
Sounds cool. We all really liked the name. Like we've never had any issues personally, but we've definitely had talks with like reggae managers and stuff who have tried to convince us to change our name because of like pronunciation issues or whatever. Sure. At the end of the day, we just didn't care. Like if this is Dubbest, I don't care, dude. Like I'm just glad somebody's saying it, you know?
Well, it's cool too how Dubbest still even works for you guys. Like as far as like the interest and the inspiration, it's like, and it helps a lot that you guys aren't like pompous assholes. Like you guys are like super humble and awesome. So you don't walk into a room and everybody's like, "Oh, the best is here." You know, it's like you guys are just homies and you play fucking good reggae. And I love the name. I love also how it lends itself to branding, you know, like one solid word and like the ways that you can play with font and stuff. It's like it looks good and it works well for you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've had to humble ourselves over the years, though. I think the name fit our personalities a lot more at a certain point.
I was gonna say.
I think we grew into it more like in a better way. You know, like we're more mature than we were when we came up with it. You know what I mean? I don't think we would come up with that name today.
Because people would be like, "Oh, like you know, that's a dumb name." Like it sounds cocky. Like even like I've had like family members say that like back in the day, and I'd be like, "Okay, like we are the best." You know?
We were so far. We were the worst.
We were so bad.
We were the worst.
We're just telling the truth. I mean, we're just telling the truth. Like, what the fuck?
You know, honestly, we're like probably
every time we used to type Dubbest in anything, it would try to correct it to dumbest.
Oh yeah. You would not. It would just say dumbest every time. World's dumbest.
We almost changed our name to Dumbest.
Yeah, we have a really great brother band out here, based out of Portland, and they are called World's Finest. And we had a similar kind of thought. We've known them before that particular band. We've known a lot of those guys from previous groups growing up out here in the Northwest. But they formed World's Finest, and we thought about it internally. We were like, World's Finest. That's quite the claim, you know. And it was interesting, but I mean, frankly, nobody really cares anymore 10 years later, and they are damn good. I mean, you know, nobody's the world's finest, right? That's all perspective, but they're very good. They're also not pompous assholes. And I think it's just an interesting way to go about that. Like band names are they can really define you one way or another, but I think the defining comes from how you receive the reaction to it, right? And as you said, you guys came up with a band name in 2009 that 12 years later is your identity. Whether you even feel that way or identify yourselves as that anymore doesn't matter, because guess what? You are that for the rest of your career as this band. So I think it's really interesting. Band names are always so fun, interesting to me.
By the time people told us like, "Hey, you should change your name," we felt like it was a little too late.
Yeah, we were like 5 years in by the time somebody told us it's not a good name.
And like we hadn't even really considered it. And like, I mean, personally, I was like, sometimes I'd be like, maybe we should change it, but like,
yeah, change it to what though?
Yeah,
like, we would just
like then we gotta pick a name, which sucks.
Yeah.
Like,
you would have to have something that felt far beyond what you already have, and then like you're starting over. Like you all of a sudden have to get all of your fan base to be like, "Oh, and now we're this," you know. So I think you guys made the right choice. I like it.
And it's kind of like a little bit of a reminder to us of why we did it originally. Like we're super into just like old school dub and shit. So like in a way, like we haven't like, you know, made any big actions yet, but we're trying to like put out more dub versions of our music, because I think that's part of what we got into this for.
Good idea.
So it's also a reminder to us, like, this is why we did it. So we're talking about putting out some dub some dubs of our shit more frequently.
I love the dubs you guys have released, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you, man. That's just such a cool genre. It's like nothing else, you know?
So a hard transition here, but I just wanted to jump into this because like we talked about quarantine a little bit, you know, music didn't happen for a year and multiple months. We all have to stay afloat. I'm kind of curious, like, you know, you guys are 4 individuals who made a band, so you're still individuals. I like to know, like, what are your interests outside of music? Like, what have you guys done for work? How have you stayed afloat? And like, what are your hobbies?
Good question.
Nothing.
No,
It's very well. We're still trying to figure that out.
no, I mean, I like me and my girlfriend like to try to travel and do outdoorsy type stuff as much as possible. I like going and I like video games and I don't know.
Oh yeah, man. No, same. Smoking blunts and playing video games, going on hikes. It's like
Watching funny movies and getting high.
Yeah, movies. I watch The Sopranos like every I just restart
every year.
it and I just like a couple times a year. Yeah. The Office.
I feel like we've always had trouble answering that question. Like people will be like, "What do you guys do outside of this?" And we're just like,
None of your business.
"It's more."
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, music is a full-time passion for me. Like I spend a lot of time like just reading about bands and listening to artists and bands.
That's really the only hobby we've ever had.
Yeah.
Like skateboarding when we were younger, but like
now I'm
other
afraid
than
to
that,
break my
music.
hands.
Yeah.
Music is just it's just you guys know
It's a lifestyle.
It's in your blood. It's in your every breath.
Nerding out on like who played what on what and all that shit is
finding different artists just by the musicians that are in the bands that are in, you know, they share different musicians or whatever. All of a sudden you're like finding all this
the reggae family tree that you can really
soul
pick
music,
through.
all that shit. There's so
Going
much.
on a Wikipedia adventure where you just
Whosample.com.
Yeah.
Oh man, live. There's some really good like live roots shows on YouTube. Like there's this one ITAL show that we all have watched together. We've probably watched it like hundreds of times. It's like just epic. Like I don't know. There's certain like just studying how bands crush it on stage. Like how are they getting up there and making this so powerful? Like that kind of shit. You know. So our hobbies are kind of music nerdy. I feel like we're all.
I used to spend a lot of time and money seeing Fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all did, for sure. We all saw Fish tons on the Northeast because they were always playing. But now I think we all pretty much just try to work outside of music. Like when we're not doing music stuff, I think we're pretty much all just trying to like stay afloat and just get ahead.
Trying to pay the
like
bills.
in our jobs. And just like yeah, exactly.
Surviving
is our hobby.
That's what it is, man. And all of us have side hustles, side hobbies. You know, Magic's big into glass blowing. And we talked about his love and ability to handle food and chef. I'm a big sports nerd. I run a couple of sports podcasts on the side with this as well. All the guys have different things. So it's kind of cool to have your own individual thing. And that way, when you come together, the music is the thing you all do together. And honestly, like before quarantine, all of us just did music 24/7 too. And most of us lived together for a long time. And it was that like all the time together, which is awesome. But I think that we've all grown so much in this last year because we've been forced to, frankly. And I think it's going to make, when we get back to playing music again, I think it's going to make it that much more powerful and fun, you know, like it used to be back in the days before it became a job, you know, and there's just a big difference there for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm sure it'll feel the same way for you guys. But like that show we just played this weekend felt like
it felt a little
amazing.
Extra magical. Yeah, for sure.
I am jealous of your guys' weekly rehearsals, though. I'll be honest. That's because
it's something I think we've honestly done a pretty good job continuing that the past like decade or so. But,
the entire time we've always practiced.
Like we would usually practice on the weekends. Like any friends we had were pretty much us, but like anyone else we knew was out doing getting hammered and like driving around Bridgewater or whatever. But like we were like, yeah, I think we're gonna just work on our shit, and we would practice like every Friday night. I think Friday was our rehearsal day for like years. So we did that like religiously, and then other days of the week we'd meet up too. So we weren't like going out a lot. We were kind of just working on this.
We would go to shows, but I think that was just helping with inspiration, obviously.
Nice.
Yeah,
and like we partied, but we partied while we were playing
together.
music.
Yeah, we partied together. Like play it the whole time.
Yeah.
We weren't going outside of our box.
We weren't doing like dumb, like just reckless things. We were staying out of trouble.
We were making poor musical decisions.
Well, that's better than making poor other decisions. Before we move on to this, and we do have one or two more questions, we're going to get out of here. Kyle, specifically, I remember our conversation a while back when you were up here. You were rocking the Patriots hat. You guys are from the Boston area. Are the rest of you sports-ish fans Patriots, or Kyle, do you hold that claim?
I'm definitely the biggest sports fan.
Kyle's the GOAT, the sports GOAT.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle, I'm going to speak to you directly just for about 2 minutes. This is just you and me one-on-one, baby. So big year for the Patriots, obviously. Tom Brady, all this kind of stuff. I got two obvious questions. Were you rooting for or against Tom Brady in the Super Bowl?
I was rooting for him.
Yeah,
for sure. I still love Tommy. Yeah, and Gronk. You gotta have love for him. Like we don't know the inside politics of why he left, and like I think people are a little whiny about it up in New England, and it's like the man gave us 6 championships and devoted 20 years to the team. Like let's like root for him. Good for him.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you say it that way, because I feel most of the people from the Boston area, at least that I've talked to, again, I run 2 sports shows, and a lot of the New England fans I talk to are still rooting for Tom Brady. Not necessarily Buccaneers fans, but rooting for Tom Brady. Again, 9 Super Bowls, 6 championships, 20 years, incredible season. The next one I got for you, Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman just retired, longtime Patriot, of course. Is Julian Edelman a Hall of Famer in your opinion?
I think he absolutely is in my book. I just think as far as like stats wise, a lot of like analysts have already, like I've seen buzz about that, and it's like a lot of players and everybody, it's just like, the level to which he played is amazing, but stats wise, he might not make it in. But I think he'll make it at least on the ballot.
He goes in the Hall of Kyle, but not in the Hall of Fame.
Hey, that matters, man. He's second all time in playoff receptions and receiving yards behind only Jerry Rice. It's pretty powerful. So I appreciate that. I don't want to digress too much, but I had to sports nerd out while I could. And I've been talking about it a lot on my other shows. So I wanted to get a local New England opinion on 2 of the hotter topics. So I appreciate that. Before we get out of here, I did want to talk to you guys quickly about manager situation. So I have played the role in Soul Seed basically from the beginning of the band manager, longtime booker. We did eventually bring on a booking agent, our good brother Alan Roper, who I fucking cannot thank enough. But I'm still kind of the go-between between the guys and Alan, and saying yes and no, and trying to think of everything. And then when we get to the show, I'm orchestrating everything like that. I'm working on the bus on the way to the show, blah, blah, blah. It's a full-time gig on top of playing music, and it's exhausting, frankly. I love doing it, but it's exhausting. And you guys had at least one tour manager that we played with and toured with. Have you always had tour managers? And if not, who plays those roles in your bands? Because Soul Seed's only had 1 tour in 10 years where it wasn't me as the tour manager. And obviously that's the goal, to have a team around you, working around you. But we've always kind of felt it best and easiest and better flow for me to just do it with the inside of the guys, because I know already what they're thinking. It's just a matter of pulling the strings. And just curious your thoughts, because bands at our level, we're not new. We've both been bands for 10 plus years, and we've been around, traveled nationally for years, blah, blah, blah. But you start building a team, there's a lot more into it. So I just want to get you guys' thoughts on that really quick. Like, have you had other tour managers? What does a touring manager actually do for you guys? and who in the band would handle those responsibilities if you didn't have one moving forward?
We always used to do it ourselves. We used to always handle our booking like originally, you know, and all the other stuff that came along with it. I don't think we had anyone besides us on the road for the first 2 tours, but then we had that Mark McGuinn came on the road. Was that the Light Flashes tour?
Yeah.
It was only half of it. Yeah. We've had a bunch of people named Mark help us out along the way.
Shouts out to all the Marks.
Yeah, Marks have been good to us.
That's all right. We have like 9 mics in our band, so that's fine.
Yeah, we did it mostly ourselves, and then he came along, but he didn't do a lot of the tour manager stuff. It was just kind of like having a second, you know, a helping hand on the road.
Yeah.
And then Mark Pedraza came along and did that with us for a few years and helped us out for a while. But you know, at this point, we actually just started a management team.
New Mark.
A new person named Mark. I swear to God,
Yeah.
I know, but there's a Mark.
Yeah, there's still a Mark involved.
There's a Mark involved, so that helps. But yeah, I mean, I think we all know how it works enough that when we were left to our own devices for a minute, we didn't like collapse. You know what I'm saying? But it's nice to have other people on board. We haven't done a tour in years without a tour manager. So
yeah. So we'll see if anything comes up in the near future. Like we might have to do the self-TMing thing and see how that goes.
Well, it's great. And if, you know, I mean, not that I'm a guru by any means, but I have been doing it for 10 years. And Mark Pedraza specifically, I have had the pleasure of working with him, with you guys, and kind of working around different other scenes, he and I. And he's always been a pleasure to work with, excellent in person, help run your guys' merch, help keep shows clean. Always, you know, at least from the tour that we did together, seemed to always have you guys pretty dialed in. And I always enjoyed working with Mark. So I wish him the best moving forward. If you guys ever have, you know, you fall into that role on your own and you end up doing it in-house, feel free to reach out. And I would, you know, absolutely love to give any pointers I possibly can, because it is different when you're the manager all day long and then you play the shows and then your manager all night long. It's just it's a different mentality. You're kind of, I guess, to turn back to sports quick, I've always thought of myself as the head coach and the quarterback, and it's not supposed to be like that. You're supposed to be one or the other. And I've always felt I'm the head coach and the quarterback simultaneously, and that can get overwhelming. Thankfully, the rest of the boys are fucking incredible, and they've always had my back and make it as easy as they possibly can. But not every band is able to handle it. So I'd be more than happy to lend any possible advice that I possibly could to help you guys get through that if you don't have another manager moving forward, or just fall into a tour on your own.
I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, boys, we probably will start to wrap things up. I'm super stoked to have your guys' time and your presence and your answers, and just to like learn more about the band. It would be fun to even like do another episode down the road and like, you know, see how things have grown or developed between now and when we have another episode, because you guys are the shit. You're best friends of ours, just like interpersonally, and I'm stoked to get to actually be on stage together again soon. Let's finish off, though. If you guys have anything you want to promote, that you want to rep, let people know where to find you and how to listen.
We have a new single, actually, like that's getting mixed right now, but that should be out early June, hopefully. It's called Unusual Times, about obviously the times we're living in and stuff. So that's what we got coming out right now. But yeah, just follow us on Instagram, Dubbest Music, Spotify. Follow us on Spotify, Facebook.
Dubbest.
Yeah,
And he's got the
sure.
shirt. Yeah.
We have our website, dubbestmusic.com. We have our merch store, which is dubbeststore.com. So you can get any gear there, hats, t-shirts, CDs, stuff like that. Hopefully we're getting more music up, though. We're trying to focus on that since we had some downtime. We have a lot of new material. We're trying to just start pumping out some singles and stuff like that for now.
yeah, lots of new tunes. Our band practices are exciting because when we play all these new songs and we're like, shit, we're excited to get back in the studio and start recording. So
It's awesome. Awesome. Soul Seed's working on some new music too, and we've had a tougher time practicing because we're living in separate areas, but that's awesome. We're definitely looking forward to it. I have one final question for you guys, and we'll wrap up. We are both Sugar Shack alumni, and I just wanted to hear. I've done an episode with Eddie Kopp, who is the founder, lead editor for Sugar Shack. He's been on the podcast as well. Great friend. I'm just curious what your session was like with Sugar Shack. We're huge family with Sugar Shack. They took us on very early in their journey. They actually flew out here from Florida to Oregon to film our Shades of Green music video, hung out with us for 3 or 4 days, traveled up to Portland and on the coast and everything. And just curious how that session was for you all.
It was amazing.
It was awesome.
It was a typical Florida day, like pouring rain. So we literally were sitting in their driveway like for a while waiting for the rain to like take a break. So it actually cut into our session, but we were still able to bang out 5 songs in like the hour we had. And then we just had to take off and drive to St. Pete to play a show that night.
Yeah, it was all like first take. Luckily we were just kind of in the zone that day, but like we had a show that night and the rain wasn't letting up. So we were just waiting it out. Yeah, we literally had like a little over an hour to set up, play, and like break down. Because then there's another band after us too.
Yeah,
and they got all this like electronic equipment out there, and it could rain at any second. We're just like, it was kind of weird, but like it was honestly so much fun. Like once we got flowing, it was like it was heaven.
And they're so unbelievably professional, dude. Like they're such a machine. You walk from the bus, you set it up on the deck, you rock it, or you go inside if it's raining. We've had 2 sessions with them in the music video. It's been incredible. So Seedstronauts, I know a lot of people in our scene love our family tree video. It's almost at 6 million views. We're like the 4th highest or something on their entire queue. It's ridiculous. But huge family out to Sugar Shack. So, of course, shouts out to Sugar Shack. But Seedstronauts, along with finding them on Spotify and hitting up their albums and stuff, make sure you catch their live session with Sugar Shack as well. They do have a live EP available on Spotify with Sugar Shack. So you can get those acoustic raw versions that I know our people love of ours. So I just want to bring that up because we love Sugar Shack, and I always want to give them a shout out, but also talk to the other groups that have worked with them.
Yeah, we're trying to get back there. We want to do another one soon. Hopefully we'll make that happen next time we're in Florida.
Love it.
I watched their videos and I'm thinking it's some like huge production, and you show up and it's like the patio on their house and they're just hanging out. Like they've got their equipment. They do a good job, and it's cool how it can come from just like such a humble vibe. And yeah, big up.
That deck is so much smaller in person.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. It's impressive. It's crazy. Yeah, it's very impressive all around.
Dubbest music, y'all. You guys are the shit. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time. We'll close down here, and then we will just keep chatting with you boys, and hopefully book some shows soon together so people can look forward to that. And just keep staying healthy, keep staying happy, and keep the grind on, boys.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for everything.
Love you guys so much. Take care of yourself.
Big up.
Thanks for tuning into the More Than Music podcast. We appreciate it if you'd leave us an honest rating and review wherever you're listening to the podcast. And please also subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all social media platforms at Soulseed Music. That's at SOLSEED Music. For those that leave a 5-star rating and review, be sure to listen for your comments to be read on a future episode. Stay tuned for our next episode, and feel free to share this podcast with a friend or a family member, and let's expand the branches of our family tree. We appreciate you vibing with us today, and we'll catch you next time on More Than Music.